Hello, good afternoon. Excuse me a little bit, I've got a voice going and various bugs and things like that. Never mind, we're discussing motivation, so I'm fully motivated to spend at least an hour and a bit with you this afternoon talking about motivation and decision making. We're coming today to the end of the first section of this module where we're talking about models and theories. And the aim at the end of this session is, those of you who want to stay, we'll be using a cartoon called Dilbert as a means of reviewing and revising what it is we've learnt so far. Has anybody heard of Dilbert at all? Dilbert? No? Okay. Well, that's good. So just a test, a little experiment after 5 o'clock to see how much we can learn and apply. Just before we start, just a reiteration from the points made over the last couple of weeks that the essay, which is the case study, is due in on the 20th of March, 5 minutes to midnight, through Turnitin. We've been talking about that over the last few weeks. We continue to talk about that during the course of this week. We focus in on the structure of the case study and the style of writing particularly to make sure that you're okay and on track to hand in a comprehensive and coherent essay on the 20th of March. The examination, of course, the dates aren't yet set for that, but that'll be during the exam period in May. So we've been talking over the last few weeks about a variety of authors and a variety of theories, and you've probably gone a bit mind-numbed with the mass of authors and the mass of theories and the mass of thought processes that we've had to deal with. This is a little summary of them, particularly looking at the ones in terms of motivation and decision-making, and you'll recall what I've done is divide them up into sections. So the classical theories, which the originators of the thoughts about, in this case, motivation and decision making, and then contemporary theorists, those who've taken that original viewpoint and said this is not how it appears to us today. Then we've looked at other authors who've taken particular aspects of the theories and the context for the theories, and we'll be continuing that thought process during the course of this afternoon. And at the end of this, that's the end of decision-making, motivation, organisations and leadership. And we move next week into drivers that are forcing organisations and businesses to change and adapt. So there's a mass of names, but what I hope we'll be able to do over the revision sessions that will also run during the course of this next few weeks is to be able to give you easy ways in which you can understand and slot all of these things together. Because once you get the point of one starting point, the rest of it falls into place, provided you can remember some of the names. Not all of the names, some of the names. Maybe some of the dates. Not all the dates, but some of the dates. So let's look first at motivation. So we looked briefly last week at motivation. And we talked about intrinsic motivation. That's the things that within us, intrinsic, internal, the things within us that make us want to do things. And it might be part of being a group and doing things, or meeting a challenge by doing things, by developing ourselves. And there's also these type of motivations which are external to us, extrinsic motivation they're called, external, extrinsic motivations. So these are things that are given to us or put around us to help us motivate ourselves. And these might be rewards, for instance, payments, salaries. They might be grades at the end of a semester. So if you think of yourself as a student, part of the motivation is your desire to develop yourselves, and part of the motivation is that we have set goals and targets for you, and at the end of it you'll be rewarded with marks, which hopefully will be very high. And potentially, if you don't follow the rules and things like that, there will be some punishments. So essentially there are two types of motivations. One is internal to us, self-motivation. One is external to us, extrinsic or external motivations. So you're going to be intrinsically motivated because you're here, you're all self-starters, you're self-motivated individuals, you wish to learn, you have a desire to learn, you have a capacity to learn, and you wish to understand your role and place better in the world. That's why you're here. You're looking to gain an understanding of particular topics and to gain specializations in those topics that you can then take further into the world of work and develop as a career. Now, generally speaking, motivation theories are divided into two sorts. They're called content and process. So the content theories are those that are around what makes up that motivation. The process theories are, and what is the process by which I become or you become motivated. So there's a lot of wording here. The slides, as always, and the lectures, the recording of the slides will be on Moodle. But we just need to understand at this stage that there are two types. There's content, what is that motivator, and process. How am I motivated? What is the process of motivating me? We're going to look at these in turn. So we started to look at content because we looked at last week Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you'll remember, was a triangle. Down at the bottom was a physiological section, and at the topmost of the pyramid, was self-actualization. And what Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy of needs is designed to show is that we all have a variety of levels of need. At the basics is we all need food and water. We need to be healthy, we need to be able to sleep and so forth. And once we have attained that level of satisfaction, or that level of motivation, then we can move on to the next level. And we progress up through that hierarchy of needs to the top. And the main aim, according to Maslow, is that we become what he calls self-actualized. That means that we are at our most creative. We are at our peak performance when we're self-actualized. And what he suggests is we can't move up the hierarchy until the lower levels of motivation are fully met. Now, we also talked about the fact that these can be translated to work-life motivations. So physiological needs would be met in the work environment by a warm environment in which you can work, some form of basic salary. Safety needs, in Maslow's terms, will be met in the work by offering you some degree of job security, health insurance and work safety and so forth, all the way up to self-actualization, which in work terms might be creativity, designing new products, training and developing yourself, career advancement and so forth. So we've already started to look at motivation and understanding how workplaces and organizations and businesses can motivate their employees. So self-actualization, according to Maslow. A musician must make music, an artist must paint, a poet must write, if he is to be ultimately happy. What a man can do, he must do. This need we may call self-actualization. The specific form of these needs will, of course, vary greatly from person to person. In one individual, it may be expressed maternally, as the desire to be an ideal mother, in another athletically, in another still another aesthetically, the painting of new pictures and so forth. But Maslow's desire was that we all become self-actualized. That, he felt, was the true purpose of being human and having these brains, that we become self-actualized individuals. Now, there are difficulties with Maslow's hierarchy of needs in practice, particularly when we're relating or trying to relate Maslow to the workplace. The key one, of course, is that not all of our needs and not all of our motivation needs are met by going to work. Only some people truly attain a work-life balance that means that their work fulfills all of their needs. For most people, going to work is just something they have to do because they have to pay bills, they have to buy food, they have to pay for the warmth of their houses and so forth. So work is just something that we do. And as we have seen in the early weeks of this module, work itself has changed over time. The meaning of work has changed over time. So there are a number of instances and points that indicate that Maslow's approach to motivation and motivation of employees in the workplace is not always that straightforward. And therefore, of course, there are opportunities for other authors to come along and start presenting alternative viewpoints. One of those is a guy called Hertzberg. So he suggested there are two factors. So still working along the content area here, there are two sets of activities going on, both of which are separate from each other. So Maslow's was a hierarchy of needs, just from bottom to the top, and Hertzberg has taken these and split them into two, called them motivators and hygiene factors. Motivators are those which offer satisfaction at work, and hygiene factors are those which can produce dissatisfaction at work. So motivator factors, satisfiers, they're intrinsic. We mentioned intrinsic before, they're internal to ourselves. So it's achievement, it's recognition, it's the quality of the work itself, it's the amount of responsibility that we're able to take on, it's the means by which our careers are advancing. That's what produces job satisfaction. The absence of those doesn't produce non-job satisfaction or dissatisfaction. The absence of other things produces dissatisfaction. So dissatisfaction are extrinsic to yourselves. So salary, the quality of the management and supervision, company policies, working relationships, the conditions that you're working in, the people that you're working with and so forth, they produce dissatisfaction. So there is this disjoint between the type of motivations which are called motivators or satisfiers and the type of motivators which are called hygiene factors. So we're beginning to split the idea of motivation now. There are two types of motivations, not one, as Maslow would have us understand. There are two types. There are those external to us and there are those internal within us. And we both view those differently. So any employer looking to motivate a team or a new project group or just members of staff needs to understand that there are two different types of motivators. So the hygiene factors are those whose absence motivates but whose presence has no perceived effect. So if we go back to these, for instance, there will be instances where it doesn't really matter how much money you get, that doesn't produce better satisfaction. Having a bigger office doesn't necessarily produce a more motivated workforce, because part of the motivation comes from within the person. It's the desire to succeed, it's the desire to excel. So the employer, you as the future managers, you as the future leaders, you have to think about motivating your members of staff from two viewpoints. One is the terms and conditions under which they're employed, and one is the means by which you can engender satisfaction and job desire and work satisfaction within themselves. So recognizing their achievements as well as paying them some money, for instance. So this becomes quite complicated then for a manager or a leader. And remember, I'm talking to you as future managers and future leaders of organizations and businesses. So motivators then are those things that allow for psychological growth and development on the job. So they're linked more clearly to Maslow's higher levels of needs. So the opposite of job satisfaction is not job dissatisfaction, but rather no satisfaction. And the opposite of job dissatisfaction is not job satisfaction, but no dissatisfaction. So you'll find in some instances that no matter how much money you pay people, they're not happier at their work because they're not getting recognized, for instance. There's no career advancement. There's no better work, there's no environment and better teams that they can be working with. So if you think that the only way to motivate people is through money, then you need also to consider the ways in which you can develop them as individuals. So job design needs to focus on motivation factors. So that's Hertzberg's two-factor theory. We next move on to McKellen's achievement motivation theory. So we're moving along here, step by step, as each author comes up with a viewpoint, presents that viewpoint to us as students of motivation, and then someone else has a response. So McKellen's viewpoint was that motivation is all about achievement, authority and affiliation, and people are motivated by their desire to achieve, what he calls NH, the desire to achieve. So people are motivated first of all by achieving something, then by being in a position of authority, and then by having relationships in terms of affiliations. So achievement then is success, excelling at their work, gaining feedback for doing well at work. In terms of authority, the need for authority, people wish to be seen to be influential and in a position of responsibility. They need to be seen to be effective and to feel themselves to be effective and to be understanding that they're making a difference to the team or to the workplace or to the task. And finally, there needs to be an affiliation network within the work environment so that people can feel to be part of a society. People who have a high NH, as he would suggest, people like you, like situations where you can take personal responsibility for finding solutions to problems. So we're giving you problems. You are tasked with coming up with solutions to those problems, like case studies or exams or essays or group projects or presentations or whatever it might be. You set yourselves moderately high goals and you want concrete feedback on your performance. So this becomes quite important because people like you don't set themselves generally low goals because they're too easy to achieve. But people like you don't set yourselves too higher goals because you know realistically they're unattainable. You also need feedback on your performance. So when you're handing in your work, you're expecting a mark and you're expecting comments which are designed to help support you in your further achievement when we come to the next task or the next module or the next semester. So we've talked very quickly then about Maslow, hierarchy of needs, Hertzberg's two-factor theory, and McKellen's achievement motivation theory. Basically these that then are saying, in terms of content, this is what people are looking for when they're being motivated or when you wish to motivate them. You need to offer them things. You need to offer your employees things other than a salary and an office. You need to offer them the means by which they can develop themselves, the means by which they can gain constructive feedback, the means by which they can feel to be part of a team. And we've talked previously about groups and teams and leadership. And hopefully if you'd spent any time thinking through the various lectures that we've had and the various theorists, you'll have started to recognise that there is a common link. There's a link between the type of leader and the type of organisation and the type of motivation. That if you take an organic type organisation, it will have a leadership who are more supportive of their members of staff, who will give them greater responsibility, who will allow them greater decision making. That motivation then becomes part of the way in which the people work. That's separate from an organisational type like a mechanistic organisation, where you have a very clear top-down structure, you have a lack of communication going up the ladder, there's a lack of feedback, and it's simply about attainment of tasks and goals. So hopefully you'll be able to see when you start revising through this mass of authors and names that actually this is quite simple. Once you've got an organisation type, you have a leadership type, you have a motivational type, and you have a decision-making type. And they follow naturally on. And it would be hard to envisage a situation where you have a mechanistic type organisation with a great deal of creativity. It would be hard to envisage a situation where you have an autocratic leader and a very team-oriented organisation. It would be very hard to envisage a situation where you have a System 2 type organisation and a high level of self-actualisation. So you can begin to visualise, hopefully in time, this split between two types of organisation structures, leadership types, decision-making structures, and motivations. Hopefully. Let's move briefly on to process theories then. So remember, content theories of motivation are what makes us motivated. What makes us motivated? So we've said Maslow, hierarchy of needs, Hertzberg, two factors, McKellen's desire for achievement. Process theories then are the process by which people become motivated. And as always, the whole variety of different types and theories of this, and we're just looking at 3. So the first one we're looking at is Adam's equity theory. People are motivated in relation to how they see themselves in relation to other people. So they're motivated if they're treated equally with other people, and they're demotivated if they're treated better or worse than other people. And people come to this viewpoint as to how they are in relation to other people by comparing what's called inputs and outputs. So the inputs are such things as effort, loyalty, hard work, commitment, skill and ability, adaptability, flexibility, tolerance and so forth. And the outputs are the financial rewards that the person gains, and the intangibles that might include recognition, reputation, responsibility, praise and stimulus. Now you begin to get an understanding here that these are nuances, these aren't significant differences here, because you've still got 2 sections. You've got the 2-factor theory that we talked about before, you've still got extrinsic and intrinsic. All this is saying is that if we take these extrinsic and intrinsic as read, then people are motivated in relation to other people. So if I'm earning as much as my colleagues, then that's fine and we'll work equitably together. If we find that someone is earning more than us, we won't be so motivated because we won't understand why this other person is earning more than us, or has longer holidays, or a better pension, or better career advancement, or more training, or whatever it might be. So what we do is we view ourselves in relation to other people, and our motivation then is based upon what other people are achieving, and we view it in terms of what they're gaining. We can then adjust how much we put into the job. If we find ourselves on a level field with other people, then we'll have as much effort, as much loyalty, as much commitment, as much hard work and so forth as these other people. If we find that we're treated less well than other people, then what we will do as individuals is turn down our effort, turn down our loyalty, turn down our commitment to the role, maybe not work to such a high level of quality, maybe not turn up on time so often. So we can take adjustments and we can balance our work and our input based upon what we see being given to ourselves in relation to other people. So equity theory then is based upon our perception of other people. Because very often you don't actually know what other people earn. You just have an assumption about what they're likely to earn, what their commission rates might be, what their hours of work are, and so forth. So if you feel there's some degree of inequality, then you're likely to react in some way. And that means you'll change your inputs, or you'll change your outcomes. So you'll desire less. So you can work less hard, or just be less interested. And what that means then is, unfortunately then, you start to distort your perception of yourself and other people. So the team that you're in starts to become divided. Whereas before you were a team, if you now find that someone else is earning much more than you and is on a different contract, then potentially you'll start switching down your level of motivation and you'll start reacting against that person or several people who are earning in your perception or having a better deal in your perception. And in the end, you'll just leave. So the equity theory simply looks at me as an individual, part of a team of individuals, assuming that we're all on the same playing field, same level. And if we find that that isn't the case, then we will adjust our behaviours to get to the point where we feel, well, okay, now we're kind of matched. That other person earns more than me, but I'm not so interested in the job. I don't work so hard. I don't finish the job so well as they do. So again, if you're the manager or leader, then you need to understand that this is how your employees are viewing your management of the task and the team. So the second process theory to look at then is Locke's goal theory. So we've talked about goals before, because one of the leadership theories then was the leader's task is to set the path and the goal. So if we then think, well, okay, there's a link then between the type of leadership and the type of motivation, then if the leader's task is to define the path and the goal, then presumably there's some kind of motivation theory to go along with that. And goal theory is one of those theories. What this suggests is that people need goals. So the leader's task is to define the goal and clear the pathway of obstacles. And following on from that then, people do like goals. People are motivated by having a goal to achieve. So having a specific goal, it's been found, increases performance. Difficult goals, when the team accepts the difficult goals, do result in higher performance than do easy goals. But of course, following on from the previous model, excessively difficult goals are not motivation. So these have to be goals that the individuals on the team view as being achievable, but perhaps at the higher end of what they believe to be achievable. Feedback then, as to how we're doing along the way, produces higher performance. So this again links in with the leadership. So the leader's task was to clear the obstacles, define the path, and define the goal, and offer feedback. And when they're doing that, then the team become more motivated because they have a goal and they're getting feedback as to how they're doing it. The difficulty always here is that if the goals aren't clearly set by the manager, then the team will potentially start making their own goals. Linked in with the last theory looked at, which is if the team doesn't believe in the goals, or doesn't believe that all the team have the same goals, or are being recognised and rewarded in the same way for those goals, then they'll adjust their own performances. So goal setting theory. The individual sets goals, and the team sets goals, and the manager sets goals. By having set those goals, we then become motivated. Because once we've accepted the goal, we work towards achieving it. The goals have to be challenging but realistic. So not too easy, not too difficult. We change the goals that we set you year by year. The goals that we set you increase in difficulty each year in recognition of the fact that you're learning, gaining experience, and are increasingly self-motivated. So by the end of the third year, you set yourself effectively your own goals. You know that by the end of the third year what it is we're looking to achieve. You define that goal yourself. At this stage, in the first year, we're defining the goals really for you. So there are things called goal mechanisms. So why do we have goal mechanisms? What is the purpose of a goal? So we specify goals. We direct attention and means and resources towards achieving that goal, and we therefore, as a result, are not distracted by things that are not related to that goal. High goals lead to greater effort than low goals. So having goals are important because once we accept we have a goal, we'll work towards it. But as I mentioned before, it has to be a realistic but high goal, not an easy goal. Goals have a positive effect on persistence. So if we have a goal, we'll continue to strive to achieve that goal. And we will try and find ways of achieving that goal that are different to or adjacent to the ways that we originally set. So once we have taken on a goal as an employee, we will start to take on that and manage that and own that goal ourselves. But there are things called moderators. So we have the mechanisms by which the goal is set, but we also have the kind of reality check, the moderators. So we've got some some words here which I'm explaining really in the little bits of red. In order for a goal to be successful, the person must be committed to it wholly and possess what's called self-efficacy. That means a belief in your own abilities. There's no point in setting a goal and you taking on the goal if you don't believe you can do it. So the manager, you as the manager, must always check A, that the person understands the goal, and B, that they think they can achieve it. And then C, if they don't think they can achieve it, what resources and support they need to be able to achieve it. So what we're doing in the first year, for instance, in this module, is we've set you a goal which is to write a 1,500-word essay on a case study of your own choosing. Prior to starting this module, you may not have known what a case study was. You certainly didn't know much about organisations and businesses, one might suggest. And the task then is to help you gain that goal, so that in the end you don't need so much help to achieve that goal. So the task of the managers or the lecturers, and Sathis and I, is to support you, to deliver the goal to you, to show you that it's achievable, to give you the mechanisms that allow you to achieve it, and let you get on with it. But we're monitoring it along the way. In the third year, there's much less monitoring. You set your own goals, much less monitoring on the part of the tutors and so forth. So for goals to be effective, people need summary feedback that reveals progress in relation to their goals. If they do not know how they're doing, it is difficult or impossible for them to adjust the level or direction of their effort, or to adjust their performance strategies to match what the goal requires. So this week, as an example, one of the things that we're doing is we're working through the quality requirements of writing at academic HE standards for the first year. So part of the goal is that we expect you to write a case study of 1,500 words. Our desire is that you achieve the maximum amount of marks that you can, and in order to support that, what we're going to do in this instance is we're going to help you understand what we're looking for in terms of the quality of writing. Because it might well be that not all of you fully understand what is required in terms of writing an academic piece of work at undergraduate first year level. So we give you feedback. We'll ask you to do a draft paragraph. We'll ask you to do an outline case study plan. And then we'll give you feedback. So you can start to develop your skills and experiences and start to think, actually I know how to do this. I can achieve this goal. More complex goals require what's called proximal goals rather than singular distal goals. These simply mean that in order to achieve a goal, it needs to be broken down into little goals, sub-goals, short-term goals. So the long-term goal is that you leave this university with a degree in marketing or advertising to the highest quality level that you have. In order to help you achieve that, we've broken this process down into a series of years, into a series of semesters, into a series of tasks, and we give you feedback on as regular basis as we can. So this helps you understand that you're on the right route and you're taking the right direction, you're making the right decisions, or helps you identify where you need further support as you move along. Locke's goal theory then simply says in order to motivate people, they need goals. But saying do this is not a goal. Goals need to be owned by the teams and the individuals concerned. They need to be broken down into small tasks or sub-goals, and there needs to be a consistent set of feedback to allow the individual and the team to understand where they are along the pathway. So this links in, as I mentioned before, with the leadership role. So the leadership role, in terms of path goal, leadership role, links directly in with the motivation theory. So you can start to see now that these things come together. There is an organisational structure and a leadership style and a motivational style, and they're linked all the way through. All you've got to do is remember the authors' names. Not an easy task. But you do start to find that actually some of the names start to reoccur. Charles Handy was one that we came across a lot previously. Vroom is another name that we come across quite a lot in this kind of field. So this is a further type of process theory related to motivation. So process theory, remember, the means by which people are motivated. Vroom's expectancy theory says people will be motivated on the basis that they can see some outcome coming from what it is they're being asked to do. And what it suggests is there are three components to this. There's effort, performance, and reward. If I put the effort in, will it lead to higher performance? If I'm a high performer, will it lead to the desired outcomes? Will the desired outcomes be something that I want? There's a kind of equation which effort is a combination of expectancy and performance and this thing called valence or rewards. So that you'll put the effort in if you think that there is a point to the effort being put in that your performance will be recognised by something at the end of it. Expectancy theory then says I'll be motivated if I can see that there's a point to it, and the point to it is divided into three sections. So the values then are the more you're motivated, the more effort you'll put in, the higher the performance will be, and the higher your expectation for the output at the end or the reward will be. If any of these is zero, you don't put the effort in, then you're not motivated at all. If there's no reward at the end of it, you won't be motivated at all. If there's no point in putting a high performance in, you won't be motivated at all. So it does require a combination of all of these things. So if the valence is low, remember valence was the thing on the right hand side, the reward. If the reward is low, that means you're not bothered about the outcome. Therefore, you won't put the work in. As an example, very often tutors will put little tasks onto Moodle, weekly quizzes, as an example. What's the first question you ask if someone puts a quiz onto Moodle? The first question you ask is, do I get any marks for this? The second question you ask is, do those marks add up to my final grade? If any of those answers is no, you don't do the quiz. Because there's no motivation, according to expectancy theory, there's no motivation for you to do the quiz. The tutor would think, this is designed to support you, it's designed to offer feedback, it's designed to give you information, it's designed to test how you're doing. If, according to expectancy theory, there is no point to it at the end as far as you're concerned, you don't put the effort in. That means you don't do the quiz. So valence, that means the reward, the intrinsic attractiveness of it. If I said, I put a quiz on Moodle and it's 50% of your marks, you'd be very interested. So the tutor then has to work out, what is the smallest amount of marks that I can put towards a weekly quiz, as an example. There's a little toying here about things that the tutor can do to try and engender motivation versus things that you want to do to support your own particular outcome, which is just getting through this semester, just getting through this module, just getting through this year. So you're very focused on outcomes. But the reason you're very focused on outcomes, but you only put the effort in if you can see that the outcome is of benefit to you. So instrumentality. If you don't think the outcome will affect anything, then you won't be motivated to try and make the outcome the best that it can be. So if there's no point to the quiz, you don't do the quiz. If it's not part of the grades, you don't do the quiz. Expectancy then was the first one, the effort that you put in. If the effort that you're going to put in is low, or your expectancy is low, it means you don't expect the outcome to be good, no matter how hard you try. So, weekly quiz, I could get 100% in the weekly quiz. What's the point? I don't get anything for it. So there's always this difficulty. If you're the manager let's say I'm the manager in this instance, of how do I keep my staff, let's say your staff in this instance, motivated. Because I need to know on a weekly basis that they're understanding what's going on within the lectures and the seminars. We need to be able to offer some sort of guidance and support on a regular basis, so they can see themselves, the students can see themselves how they're doing. But if there's no point on the part of the students in doing the work, they won't do the work. So this is an ongoing difficulty that all lecturers have as to how they put content into Moodle to support your learning in the knowledge that you won't do the work. It's a difficulty. And it's a difficulty that's transferred to all sorts of other types of work in most companies. So expectancy theory then is geared around, if there's no expectation of some positive reward in it, at the end of it, I won't do the work. So again, this comes down to perception. This word perception is important because perception indicates with it that there is a different viewpoint. My viewpoint, my perception of weekly quizzes, for instance, is that they're a good thing. That, in my mind, taking a weekly quiz by students will help the students understand how much they know about the topic of that particular week. And it's a good thing because it allows me then, as the manager or the lecturer, to understand who's having difficulties. But our perceptions differ, because my expectancy is different from your expectancy. My perception is different from your perception. So therefore we have a kind of disparity. So I'll put the quizzes up there in the expectation you don't do the quizzes. I'll record these lectures and put them up onto Moodle in the expectation that you won't listen to them. But I keep doing that because my expectation is, and my experience is, that at some point, usually at the end of April, prior to the May exam period, people will think, actually, I ought to go through this again. Anyway, so expectancy theory. The chance of success plus how much effort is required plus the value of the expected outcome indicates how much effort you put in, i.e. how motivated you are. There's a slight variation from that, which is Porter and Lawler's expectancy theory. So this starts to slightly move around then. So we've got one viewpoint, which is the original expectancy theory, and then a slightly different one. So the performance then is in this instance is not only about effort, but also about the abilities, characteristics, and role perceptions. And what this person is saying is that you have these original aspects of terms of motivation, but also satisfaction. So how satisfying the outcomes will be are different, are separate. So your abilities and your skills in terms of how you can achieve this also differ. So this becomes slightly detailed, more nuanced view of expectancy theory. So what this suggests is there are 9 factors which affect work motivation. There's the perceived value of the rewards, that's what we've talked about before. The expectation that performance will lead to rewards, that's what we talked about before. And effort, that's what we talked about before. But this new viewpoint adds in some other things, such as job satisfaction, the perceived equity of the rewards. So at the end of it, will the level of reward that I receive be the same as the reward you receive? If I put in more effort, will I get a higher reward than you? So you begin to see that this becomes a little more complex, as these theories always do. The first one gives us a kind of simplistic viewpoint, and then following on from that, the following theorists take a more detailed viewpoint of a particular area. So we have 2 forms of expectancy theory. A kind of basic viewpoint, effort plus performance plus reward, and then a slightly more nuanced, more detailed viewpoint of motivation, which is all those 3 plus a whole variety of other things. Which means it becomes more difficult even then for a manager to look at a team of people and to try and work out how to motivate the team, whilst considering that individuals also have to be individually motivated. But not to the point that people start to see that there are differences in the rewards that people are getting, the perceived rewards. So in terms of trying to apply these motivations to the world of work, we can learn various things. So in terms of Maslow, for instance, we can use Maslow to identify the employee's unsatisfied needs, to make sure that their base needs are being met, that they have a secure salary, they have a secure job, they have somewhere to work that has heat and so forth. And we can try and identify if they have any higher aspirations, which we can also try and meet. Herzberg's two-factor theory indicates to us that the salary is important, but actually the motivation to do the job comes from other areas. So we need to find ways in which we can support the individual in their individual aspirations to do the job. Whilst doing that, from Adams' equity theory, we need to make sure that everything is clear. So in Coventry University's terms, for instance, the pay scales were published. Everybody knows what the pay scales are. Nothing is hidden. From the bottom of the scale up to the Vice-Chancellor, the pay scales are very well known. The lecturers' titles, senior lecturer, associate lecturers and so forth, are clearly within certain guidelines. So there are variations. There's a bottom limit and an upper limit for pay scale, but generally speaking, everybody who's a senior lecturer knows that generally you're on a grade 8 salary, and that there is a boundary below which you don't go and above which you don't go. So we can see then that we're treated quite fairly. We also have a set number of hours that we can teach, and no one does more than that, and no one generally does less than that. We have a certain number of holiday days, and everybody has those number of days. No one has more, no one has less. So there's an equity amongst, for instance, within Coventry University, across all levels. Expectancy theory, in terms of rooms, makes sure that employees understand what is required and be clear about how it can be achieved, so that there is a desire on the part of the manager to make sure that the individual is motivated to put the effort in, that they can put the performance in, and they will get a reward at the end of it. And Locke's goal-setting theory then suggests that employees need smart objectives and a part in setting them. In terms of job design then, we can then start to use motivation to design people's jobs. And so we can offer intrinsic motivation as well as extrinsic motivation, and start to define people's roles and the parameters within which they're working in order to ensure their maximised motivation. Money is important, but it doesn't meet all people's needs. The money needs to be seen to be fair. In terms of expectancy theory, it needs to be realistic in terms of and in relation to the amount of effort that's put in. And in terms of goal-setting theory, it needs to be clearly defined when that money is being paid and the basis upon which it's being paid. So that's motivation, done and dusted. And hopefully you'll have seen that there's now a link between all these topics that we've been talking about, like groups and teams, like leadership styles, like structures and so forth. We're going to spend a bit of time talking about decision making, not much, and then we'll have a little break and move on to how we make sense of it all in the real world, or at least in relation to Dilbert. So decision making then, we started last week. We talked briefly, I think, last week, maybe the week before. The classical view then of decision making, defined as the rational model of decision making. So the rational model, the classical viewpoint of decision making, suggested that the rational manager takes a complete and fully informed view of the aspects to be decided upon. They define the problem, and the definition is as clear and as well considered, irrespective of time. The number of ideas which are generated are as complete as possible and encompass all aspects of possible permutations. An alternative is selected from the largest number of choices available. The selected alternative is implemented without consideration about cost, and then the results are monitored at the end of it. So the rational model of decision-making process, the classical model of decision-making, assumes that there are no costs concerned with decision-making. So there are no costs concerned with decision-making, there are no time constraints concerned with decision-making, there are no resource considerations related to decision-making. It is as full and as comprehensive and as complete as it can be. But of course, we know that isn't true. We know it's not possible to know all possible alternatives. We know it's not possible to know the consequences of implementing each one of those alternatives. It's not possible to have a well-organized set of preferences for all of these consequences. And we don't have the ability to be able to compare in advance what the consequences are out of all of these various numbers of alternatives. So we don't have the ability to be able to make fully rational decisions. Even though we'd like to think that our decision making is rational, it is not as fully rational as it would like to be. So what we work within is a field called bounded rationality. Bounded rationality provides parameters around the decision-making process. And the key word here is satisfies. We'll do as much as we need to come to a decision that we think is the right one. We'll do as much research as we want to, given the time considerations available, to come up with a number of alternatives. We'll make a decision based upon the alternative that suits us best, based upon our information available at the time, and any other information that we feel we might want to be able to get hold of. We'll implement it to the best of our abilities, given that we know we haven't got infinite budgets, we haven't got infinite resources and so forth, and then we'll see how we do. So bounded rationality, which is the current viewpoint about how we generally make decisions, says that we'll have a go at coming up with as rational a viewpoint as possible, but we're pragmatic. We'll do as much as we need to get to the point where we can say we're happy with this. It's not optimum, but we need to move on and make a decision. So we have the rational model of decision making, and we have bounded rationality. So bounded, working within parameters. So the difference then between rational decision makers and bounded rational decision makers are that the rational decision maker will recognize and define a problem thoroughly, and the bounded rational decision maker will reduce the problem to something that's easily understood. So something we can discuss and come to some agreement about. The rational decision maker will search for an extensive set of alternative courses of action, gathering data on each. Bounded rational decision makers will develop a few uncomplicated and recognizable solutions comparable to those currently being used. So bounded rationality then suggests that the decision to be made will be largely based on the decision that was previously made. Rational decision making suggests that every time a decision comes up, it is completely reviewed based upon all the information that is available at the time. And that isn't how things work. The way that we develop a module, for instance, isn't each year we come up with, let's create a module on organising a business. It's, this is what we did last year. How did it go last year? We'll do it again this year. And maybe do some things differently, or not, as the case may be, depending on how much time we've got and so forth. So the rational decision maker evaluates all alternatives at the same time, and the bounded rational decision maker makes decisions as they move along. The bounded rational decision maker moves along to a point of decision, whereas the rational decision maker views everything as a completely new project. So the important terms here then are the rational decision maker maximizes the solution, and the bounded rational decision maker produces a satisfactory solution. Moving on from that then, we can start to think that there are different types of decisions we need to make. So we talked previously about decisions. There's a rational decision maker and a bounded rational decision maker. But actually, of course, some decisions are bigger. Let's build a motorway. Let's build the Millennium Stadium. Let's build High Speed 2. And some decisions are quite small. Where should we go for dinner? What colour should my next pair of shoes be? These are different in scale. And so therefore we can start to think, given that there are different types of scales of decisions and different types of impacts and importance of decisions, so therefore we can start to think that the decision-making process will differ according to the type of decision that needs to be made. Some are more complicated than others, some are more dangerous than others, some are more simple than others. Here's a list. You don't have to remember the list, you might just remember a couple of points, but the main thing is just to remember there is a list and people can look at the different types of decisions to be made and allocate decisions to particular individuals. So we know, for instance, from organisational work that we've done already, that leaders are defined as those who take strategic decisions. So we might define strategic decisions then as being sophisticated, complex, significant, high-risk decisions, probably made by very experienced people, probably at a very senior level within the organisation who have a great deal of experience within that particular field and understand the nuances and risks involved. Whereas ordering the paper clips, those decisions don't have to be made by the senior management, they can be made by someone at a lower level. And the decision as to which paper clips we're going to buy will probably be based upon who did we buy them from last time and is the price still the same. So we can start to see then that there are different types of decisions which are defined as routine, those that we did last time, we'll do it again this time, adaptive, which are we did this last time, we'll need to change it this time, and innovative, which is we've never done this before, what are we going to do? And you can start to think then, well, at the level of innovative decision making, we're more likely to have a rational decision making process because the risks are so great and there's so little information, we need to do a lot of research. Whereas the routine decision is just a repetitive one. So we can start to see then that there are different types of decisions, and we can start to see that there's a difference then between a routine, adaptive and innovative decision. And all you need to do really is to understand and remember that there are these different types and they can impact upon the levels of people being asked to make that decision. So Vroom, just mentioned Vroom, and here is again. So we talk about Vroom in terms of motivation. We've talked about Vroom in terms of leadership, and so that you can start to see this is where it links together, because the same academics, the same authors, will start to link together these different facets of management to their own theories. So we've talked previously about the leadership styles of autocratic to laissez-faire. So autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire. Kurt Lewin talked about leadership climates, for instance. And we know from previous work then that there will be types of decisions and types of situations where the leader makes the decision, and there will be types of situations where the team is consulted, and there will be types of situations where the leader delegates the task or the decision to the individuals. So actually beginning to think, this is all very similar. Once I've got the hang of this is just repeating the same information in slightly different contexts. So Vroom, Jaego and Yetton's model suggests that decisions then are geared around the leadership style. So you can see here then we have an organisational structure, we have a leadership style, we have a motivational style, and therefore we have a decision-making style. So the autocratic leader will make decisions themselves using information readily available to the leader. Whereas down at the bottom, with a collaborative leadership style, the group will make the decision. The leader will play a supporting role to ensure that everybody agrees on the decision. And there are various nuances and differences in between. But this is similar to the stuff that's gone on before. So hopefully it isn't too confusing. Hopefully you'll be able to see that these are reiterations. And what you remember is that management theory, contemporary leadership theory, will indicate that the same individual has to be different things to the same at different situations. So the nuances then for yourselves to understand are simply which author goes with which type of theory. So we have the viewpoint that says, in Kurt Llewellyn's style, there are three types of leadership, three types of climate, and other ones which are Tannenbaum and Schmidt. This is just a context. The same person has to be at one point autocratic, at another point democratic, at one point strong, and at one point supportive. That's the same person. So the question as to whether or not how the decision made is really based upon how much the group knows. And this again comes back to something we looked at before, which is the leadership style will differ according to the maturity of the individuals making up the team. So if the team is quite an immature in terms of experienced team, the leader has to take on a stronger decision-making role. The leader has to change the motivation structure. So the leader has to change, and whether or not the group makes the decision is based upon what the outcome will be in terms of the group taking on the task required of it. So this is in part goal setting. So there are disadvantages, though, of allowing a group to make a decision rather. And we've talked previously about some of these. So the disadvantages of groups are a thing called groupthink, a term we've come across before. So sometimes groups don't make good decisions for all the reasons that we talked about before when we were talking about teams and groups. There's social pressure. So the pressure to conform can sometimes distort people's viewpoints. They don't take as strong a lead or offer a viewpoint, even though they might have experiences. They don't take part in the conversation. So there's a variety of disadvantages of making group decisions. So the leader's task is to understand the qualities and abilities of the team and to work out what decision should be made and how that decision should be made. Just to finish off, we've come an awful long way in a relatively short period of time. And there's a little bit more to go. What we're going to be doing over the next 3 weeks is we're going to be talking about key drivers which affect organisations and businesses, looking over the 3 weeks at different areas. So the first week will be on corporate social responsibility and stakeholders. The second week will be on competitive advantage and globalisation. And the third week will be on change management, conflict management and organisational culture. But the work that you've done, hopefully very successfully so far, hopefully be embedded part of it in your mind. At least you know there are resources available to help you become and grow to be successful leaders and managers in the future. We're going to take a short break now, and then we're going to come back onto Dilbert. So this is Alice, Wally. So this is Dilbert, Alice, Wally, and the spiky-haired boss. So the spiky-haired boss is important because it gives an indication of the style of leadership that's happening within this organisation. Right, so you need to focus on this. This is a little bit of experiment. It may not work. It might be just zonk. I have no clue what he's talking about. You might have thought that for the last 6 weeks, but this But if you thought that was the last 6 weeks, you'll think this is... So no one, I don't think anyone has heard of it, Dilbert. That's not a problem. So Dilbert was a very successful cartoon, syndicated all around the world. Dilbert is a person in an organisation. It's not a great organisation. Its reflection, Dilbert's role and life in this workplace is a reflection of most people's workplace. And he has all sorts of characters there, which we don't need to particularly know. But there's Alice and Wally. They're the main people that he works with. It's important to know that Dilbert is an engineer. So his department is the engineering department. So this was a syndicated cartoon in newspapers and magazines. Hugely successful for a large number of years. And then they tried it on television. They started a cartoon series. And it ran for 2 series. It struggled really, I think, to gain and capture the humour and essence of the cartoon strip in the newspapers. But I thought it'd be interesting, might be a futile waste of time, I thought it'd be interesting to see whether you can understand and apply what you've started to learn in terms of organisations, leadership, management, decision-making, etc., to as close a work-life example as you can in the cartoon setting. So these are short little snippets from the first 4 episodes of Dilbert. And the story is simply that they've got to come up with a new product. The reason we study theories and models and authors and things like that is it allows us to better understand and describe what's happening in the world around us. That's only useful if we can find a way of linking all these models, authors and theories to the world around us, because otherwise it's just an abstract piece of something that we're learning. So I looked at Dilbert and thought, this is what we're learning. Just as I watched the Lego movie. Has anybody seen the Lego movie? Yeah? And thought, this is what we're learning. This is organisational theory in film. So as an experiment, we don't have to do it for very long, we might find, not a clue. These are very short snippets, there's only a minute, we can go over it twice or so, but I just want you to think about all the things that you've learned, forget the names, just some concepts or thoughts, and see if you can start to apply some of those to this situation to describe what's going on. Okay, so this is the first one. It's kind of introduction and setup to the whole activity in this first 4 episodes.
Geez, the network is slow today. Too slow. Oh no. Is it? Yes.
Nothing but resumes. People are bailing out. There must be a problem with our new flagship product.
Ah, the herbal throat lozenges?
I told them at the rollout meeting that anthrax was a bacteria, not an herb.
No, you didn't.
I was thinking it pretty hard.
Oh, some poor marketing executive will have to take the fall for this one.
Bob, you made quite a mess with the herbal lozenges product line.
Don't believe everything you read in all the major news outlets. Try one. Worth a shot.
Bob, you're like a son to me.
You don't have a son.
That's where I'm headed here.
Oh.
Now, this isn't easy for either of us, but I have to ask you to take your huge executive severance package and go find a higher paying job at another company.
This is barbaric! I have given my soul to this company!
Go and play it another time, okay?
Geez, the network is slow today. Too slow. Oh no. Is it?
Yes.
Nothing but resumes. People are bailing out. There must be a problem with our new flagship product.
Ah, the herbal throat lozenges?
I told them at the rollout meeting that anthrax was a bacteria, not an herb.
No, you didn't.
I was thinking it pretty hard.
Oh, some poor marketing executive will have to take the fall for this one.
Bob, you made quite a mess with the herbal lozenges product line.
Don't believe everything you read in all the major news outlets. Try one. Worth a shot.
Bob, you're like a son to me.
You don't have a son.
That's where I'm headed here.
Oh.
Now, this isn't easy for either of us, but I have to ask you to take your huge executive severance package and go find a higher paying job at another company.
This is barbaric. I have given my soul to this company.
Okay, what do you pick up on that? Someone got fired. Okay. Product failure. Okay. So a bit of decision making there.
And that guy, he said something, but he actually didn't make an input in the meeting or something.
Excellent. Yeah, so there was a meeting. So there was a team meeting. He knew that anthrax, which of course is a deadly poison, wasn't a herbal remedy, but he didn't say anything. In terms of thinking then what that means in practice, what does that tell us about the organisation? So what are the terms that we've talked about before? There's a hierarchy. Yes?
Yeah, you were discussing about how that people need to feel that they're being rewarded for them to further themselves in the company.
Right, that's very good. So there's a hierarchy. We know that because there are various people having to have made decisions. There's a decision-making problem. There's a communication problem. There's a motivation problem. The motivation problem and the communication problem is that the hierarchy is such that there's no desire on the part of people lower down to inform the people higher up that there's a problem. So that indicates to us that this is a kind of bureaucratic, mechanistic organisation, because information is flowing down, information doesn't flow up. Right? So what you get here in 1 minute is a very shorthand viewpoint on what a mechanistic organisation feels like. At least you do if you've seen this 10 times, as I have. Okay, so here's another one.
Well, how's the prototype coming? A rotating cube. I like it. Can we be first to market?
That's a screensaver.
Save the technical mumbo-jumbo. I just want to know if it'll work.
It'll work, but everyone already has one.
Well, that's no good. What else do you have?
We were tossing around the idea of a time machine.
Well, you'd better get going on that. I've heard there's a rival engineering department right here in our own organization moving into our turf and developing their own prototype.
Just out of curiosity, who's running the other department?
Lena.
Lena? You mean there really is a Lena? I always thought she was just a myth.
She's more than a myth. She's like the Xena of engineers.
Anyway, no shame in being a runner-up. After all, Albany is beautiful this time of year.
Albany?
Whoever designs the next prototype will need more floor space. I'll have to relocate the unproductive engineers to our facility in Albany.
Okay, so what do we get from that? Competition between... Yeah, competition between employees. What's that an indication of? Yeah, why would you have competition between? What he says is there's a rival engineering team. So rival. Okay, that's good then. Right. So this leader, so the guy with the spiky head boss, is trying to motivate the teams by saying that the team who fails will be sent to Albany, which looks horrific. We're beginning to get another sense then that in a mechanistic environment where you have poor leadership who sets up competition between departments when they should be working together. So you're starting to get an idea then of the kind of organisation in which Dilbert is working. He says there's no shame in being a runner-up. So this isn't about aspirations, this isn't about self-actualisation and so forth. This is a leader imposing decisions on people, splitting up teams. So this tells us something about different leadership styles.
Ew, yuck.
All pedestrians eliminated. Game over.
Can we do some work now? One more game. I think I can get to the rest home if I blow up the daycare center.
Welcome to Pedestrian Outrage. Remember, I'm the only woman who loves you. Registered user Wally.
He's hooked.
We're on a deadline here. We need to design the company's new flagship product, and we need it yesterday.
Yesterday? Then it's already too late. Which means, yes, one more game.
Everything's been invented.
No, it hasn't. A time machine. That's just one example.
All right, let's go with the time machine. Well, that's it. I'm inured to violence now.
Okay, what can you see there? Sorry? Well, you've got two types of people, haven't you? You've got Wally, who's motivated. Sorry, you've got Dilbert, who's motivated, and Wally, who isn't motivated. Wally will prefer to do the game and find all sorts of reasons why he shouldn't be doing the work. Whereas Dilbert says, can we do some work now? We're on a deadline. So you can start to see then that you have two different types of people, two different types of motivations. Remember, this is 1 minute passing in front of you, a 20-minute episode, one of 20 episodes or something. All I'm trying to suggest here really is that when you watch anything, the application of theories and models that you're learning will help you to understand better what the message of the cartoon or the film or whatever it might be is. In most instances, it's still an interesting cartoon. But if you watch Lego Movie again, for instance, and view it as a film about organisational theory, you start to get a different perspective on why the characters act as they do.
Hey, look at this, Alice. Home liposuction kit. You could take one of these babies and... Ooh.
We're doomed. Lena's team is probably half done with their prototype. We don't even have an idea.
Lena is totally overrated. We can beat her. I don't care if most of the engineers have gone over to her side.
Lena's team is so big you could get lost in the crowd and never have to lift a finger.
They might get the big raises and the party atmosphere, but they'll never know the satisfaction that comes from really hard work.
You could have worded that better.
Okay, anything from this? So this is what we've been talking about today, oddly enough. So here's the work environment. So we're starting to talk about extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Okay, so this is the work environment in which this person works. They're all full of cubicles. Here's a little person working late. So we've already seen that Dilbert is an intrinsically motivated person. He's a self-motivated person. We've seen that Wally isn't a motivated person, a self-motivated person. So you've got our intrinsic environment here. The office is an extrinsic environmental motivational factor.
Hey, look at this, Alice. Home liposuction kit. You could take one of these babies and... Ooh.
We're doomed. Lena's team is probably half done with their prototype. We don't even have an idea.
Lena is totally overrated. We can beat her. I don't care if most of the engineers have gone over to her side.
Lena's team is so big you could get lost in the crowd and never have to lift a finger.
They might get the big raises and the party atmosphere, but they'll never know the satisfaction that comes from really hard work.
Okay, so they might get the big raises in the party atmosphere, but they'll never know the satisfaction that comes from really hard work. So that's about expectancy theory. Okay, so there's an application there of expectancy theory. So Wally, of course, is out the door because he's not interested in putting the effort in because he's not interested in the reward. Whereas Alice has demonstrated here that she's a self-motivated person and is willing to put in the effort, to put in the performance because she believes the reward is the right thing to get. So we've got something about groups and teams, we've got expectancy theory, we've got extrinsic motivation and therefore intrinsic motivation, and we've still got this idea that there's an internal competition, so we could beat her. So we have a functional organisation, we have a hierarchy, we could guess that it's a tool hierarchy, It's a functional organisation, it's a functional structure, it's not divisional as far as we're aware at this stage. It's mechanistic in style. So we're beginning to learn, theoretically. Theoretically, we're beginning to learn.
Wally,
Yes?
Wally, it's us.
So it is.
he doesn't recognize us.
Of course he does. Wally, old pal, we need you to come back to the team.
I am not of your team. I am of Team Lena. Praise Lena.
Snap out of it, you half-wit.
Oh! Pain. Lena said there would be pain for those who leave. I see she was right, but I only left to go to the bathroom. Lena, I'm coming back!
Wally, it's Dilbert and Alice. Don't you remember us?
You were from the before time, when I was not of Team Lena. Praise Lena. Lena, I return to you. I swear I will never use the men's room again.
What have you got there? Yeah, that's right. So it's about teams and leaders. So you've got autocratic, authoritative style of leadership. So Lena, who's the engineer team leader in another department that they're competing against, is a very autocratic style. So you've got then this thing called groupthink, of course, because Wally has gone over from Dilbert's team to Lena's team. So you start to get a viewpoint then, a caricature of what an autocratic leader looks like. There's a viewpoint against the other people. So there's a groupthink going on. There's also power. So one of the models we looked at was leadership, in terms of the types of leaders, but also we looked at power, the follower. So Wally, we can understand the power structure and relationship between Lena and Wally in terms of her style and his style. So these are kind of little nuances they're bringing out if you wish to join in the game. You know, you could watch this as Dilbert, or you could watch this as, that's organisational life.
First off, Dilbo, we want to tell you what a terrific job you've done on the punt blaster. The Even Product Industry News says so. They called it a product worthy of a better company.
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
Great
Who the
stuff.
man? You the man.
Thanks. By the way, it's actually called the Grunt Master.
Whoa, look who's getting all proprietary.
Easy, guy. No point in getting married to a name at this stage.
Come now, one name's as good as another. Stop being so rigid.
You're the one who insisted that the name was the most important part of the project.
I have no recollection of that. The name is the most important part of the project. I cannot emphasize this strongly enough. And once we have a name, there's no going back. That's my final word. Alice, are you getting this all on tape? Wow. I have a beautiful speaking voice.
Well, like we said, we think you're 90% there. These changes we're thinking of here are purely tweaks.
Nothing that's going to change the thrust of what you're trying to do with this in any way.
I like the way you said any twice. It shows you care. You care.
These changes are really up to you. They couldn't matter less.
Feel free to ignore any two of them.
As long as they're not two of mine. Hear what I'm saying?
But seriously, Dilb, we need to reach a demographic group that you may have overlooked.
Consumers.
Right. The people who are going to buy this thing are going to want it not just for whatever the heck it is.
It's an exercise machine.
For real?
How can you possibly market something if you don't even know what it is?
Whoa! Put the brakes on the negativity express. It's not only possible, it's possible. All you've got to do is give it more attitude.
Make it more retro, but not antique.
You know, futuristic, but not techno.
Sexier.
But more gender neutral.
You see what we're after here, right? I think we're all on the same page.
What page is that?
So, we're still on track for a spring rollout, right? We have to debut the Gruntmaster before the competition has a chance to get the jump on us.
I don't see anything that could stand in our way.
Sanity, reality, the laws of physics?
Looks like we're done here.
Dilbertio, I think I speak for everybody here when I say we've got complete confidence that you can pull this off.
But keep in mind, we're all huge liars.
Okay, so that was the marketing department. So we now know that it is a functional structure, that you've got the engineering department, however fragmented that may be. You've got the marketing department, so that's a mechanistic organisation. System 2, autocratic leadership and style. There's other things going on there in terms of conflict, in terms of decision making. The name is the most important thing. How can you possibly market something if you don't know what it is? So there's something about goal setting. So finally,
We were all very impressed with your resume, Dilbert.
Did I send a resume?
I believe your assistant, a Mr. Dilbert, was kind enough to forward it. We usually insist on an interview before offering a job, but how many double Nobel Prize winners does one see? You may have heard we have a different way of doing things around here that you'll have to get used to, but I think you'll enjoy the level of freedom we allow our employees.
Thank you.
Here's one of our recreation rooms. As you can see, at Nirvana Company, employee happiness comes first, just like in the space colonies of the future.
Oh, thank you. I was wondering, would it be at all possible for me to get on the Gruntmeister 7000 project?
Dilbert, if there were such a project, believe me, I'd not only put you on it, but you'd be the head designer with a staff of assistants and a budget that would choke a wide-necked animal.
What do you mean, if there were such a project?
You must be talking about that article in Product Industry News.
Complete fiction. I don't know how they get away with publishing that rubbish, and I certainly can't imagine anyone taking it seriously. Now, would you like to see your new offices?
Offices?
I'll leave you to acclimate to your new surroundings. If you need anything, the robots are programmed to respond to your thoughts.
I have a door.
Sorry. So what do you think of that? What's that all about? Rewards? No, not so much. Maslow's hierarchy of needs in terms of? Okay, that's good. Yeah, so Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah, moving up the ladder a bit, more sophisticated. What else? Okay, so the structure of the organisation is organic. So we've seen his original one is a mechanistic organisation. We've seen the little cubicles. We've seen the way that people work. It's very process-oriented. It's rule-oriented. It's competition between various departments. There's a lack of motivation. It's based around punishment. So we have a bureaucracy which is punishment-centred. That's one of the theories that we came across, of course, remember. And here, this is alternative viewpoint, Nirvana Company, Nirvana Co., an organic company. We don't have rules here, we don't have processes, you have freedom to do your work. So that's an alternative viewpoint. And in that alternative organisational structure, we have a different form of motivation, a different form of leadership, a different form of decision making. You also have your own office with your own door. So all of these things can be apparent to you with some experience and some thought, because it's just a cartoon. It's just a cartoon. It lasts 20 minutes. There's some episodes, and you can watch it as a cartoon because it's interesting and fun, But if you understand a little bit about organisational theory and motivation, decision making, and leadership, and so forth, you start to see that Dilbert is a critique of modern working conditions, and that's why it was so successful. Even if you understand it as a critique of modern working conditions, you can then think, oh yeah, that's my life, that's my work. But then if you know the theories, you can start to think, actually, this is a description of what an organic company looks like. This is a System 4 company. This is Dilbert's working in a mechanistic, a System 2 type company. Is that kind of leader? They're not working with Maslow. There's an expectancy theory failure here. There's a groups and teams issue here. So it's a kind of little just reminder. Or not, as the case may be, because in the end it is just a cartoon. Or it could be about organisational theories and organic companies and mechanistic companies, autocratic leaders and System 4 type leaders. Depends on your experiences and depends upon your viewpoint and input. That's all. Okay? Right. That's it. You can go now. Thank you very much indeed.